Now, there's been mixed reaction to the resignation of Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter. He was appointed in December 2019 and will officially step down in March. So will someone with engineering experience be appointed to try and fix the utility? Well, let's discuss this with energy expert Adil Nichabeleng. Adil, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning and thank you so much.
Now, it's always a pleasure. Firstly, your reaction to just his resignation.
Well, I'm quite relieved and quite happy that he finally decided to take into call what the people have been calling for. Eskom needs a strong CEO who understands the fundamentals of energy and who's occupied with bringing back the current lost capacity of Eskom. You know, the Minister of Energy has been saying that we have over 20,000 of spare capacity that is currently not even returnable into service, which means it's not been fixed and it's not been actually properly maintained. What is happening to that? Eskom has got no shortage of electricity, but a lack of proper management as well as leadership within its ranks.
Now, speaking of the Energy Minister, it's said that some of the reasons that Andre decided to step down is because of the constant attacks from Minister Mantashe. And what is said is that it was even worse because Pravin Gordhan was not able to defend him at this point. They just let the attacks continue.
Why must a CEO of an organization who's paid a good fortune to keep the company running and operational be defended by anybody? If he's doing a good job, South Africans, first of all, will not complain about load shedding. The shareholder as well as the public itself, remember, currently the shareholding of Eskom belongs to the people of South Africa. So when he complains that he was not protected, it means that we're sitting with a problem. White people in South Africa still enjoy a massive legacy of whenever they are underperforming, to be protected and be covered and shielded. So
but Adil, surely when a minister goes on to say we do not need a policeman in Eskom, we need somebody who knows generation. Some found that a bit problematic because a policeman is also needed in this instance because there was a lot of corruption. You know what's been happening with the sabotage. You've got those that are inside that are working with contractors outside. There's certain equipment that is broken, and then you've got the contractors coming into service. I mean, that on its own has compromised the nation.
Look, in terms of the compromise, the rot is deeper in Eskom. First of all, there's the big five coal suppliers who have been literally criminal of Eskom and overcharging Eskom. I haven't seen any action coming out of Andre de Ruyter to correct that situation. There's been 5 big companies who are now currently, some of them have made concessions to pay back the money and some have already paid back the money. 2.5 billion was already recovered from one of the biggest companies and the others have actually pledged. So it is very surprising that the only target and talk of corruption within Eskom has only always been black-based, or rather than corporate actually focused. So when the minister says that, you know, we don't need a policeman, he's quite right. Right now, South Africans want to know: can I guarantee myself electricity when I come home? Can I make sure that there is no interference on the road due to robots not working, spending an hour plus more on the road unnecessarily because there's load shedding in the area? So,
but it cannot be guaranteed if there are people that are tampering, internally tampering with the equipment. Because now if you've got people at these stations that are compromising us, then we will have the load shedding. So would it not be a situation where you do need a policeman, but you also then need a generation expert?
No, the current problem in Eskom has got nothing to do with tampering right now. The power stations are not tampered with. There's 2 scenarios, and I'm going to make it very clear. So, one, we've got 5,000 megawatts of Eskom that is currently under scheduled maintenance, which means they plan ahead of time, 6 months minimum, and saying in this time we're going to switch off this amount of electricity from the units that are generating so that we can maintain them. And then there is 18,000, 17,000 plus of megawatts that are currently on breakdown, unscheduled breakdown. That unscheduled breakdown, which means it was unforeseen, the units were ramped up to its capacity where it was beyond capacity to even run. There was no maintenance, there's no refurbishment, there's not been focus on those power plants. So you've got 18,000 of unavailable capacity that is just broken down and nothing has been done about it. And as a result, you cannot blame 18,500 megawatts, 200 megawatts, because that's what these units are producing. You can say maybe there is sabotage. But if there is sabotage, let's come back to the South African government. We've got the military, we've got the police, we've got the intelligence, and we've got special forces. You want to tell me all of these agencies do not have the capacity to manage these key points, which are currently the most important one? Eskom and all its power plants fall under the key points program and plan, which are manned by government and the state intelligence, as well as police and military protection. So all of these agencies are failing to can identify individuals who are causing sabotage based on intelligence and understanding and know-how. So somewhere we are being lied to. 18,000 megawatts of unscheduled breakdown of power plants that are just running down because they are unmaintained. Why? Because the focus had been moved away from philosophy, maintenance and management in terms of maintenance of power plants to what they are now calling emergency program, where they are just procuring diesel in order to just make sure that it's always above the level where they can reach the survival mode without going into load shedding. Unfortunately, that diesel is only kept to about 3,000 megawatts of supply.
So contrary to what other experts are saying, energy experts, you're saying a change in leadership will lead to better results for South Africans, because many of them are fearing the worst, actually, saying we're possibly going to experience the worst of load shedding.
Yeah, the change in leadership is definitely going to yield the best result, because unfortunately, Andre was not focused on the fundamentals, which means he was not taking the A to Z of Eskom into seriousness. Why he didn't go to each and every power plant and sit with power station managers and saying, what is the problem in this power plant? What do we need to prioritize? What do we need to do? Give me a set of your priorities, a set of your requirements in terms of capital in order to bring back this unit into operation and everything. And then on top of it, give me your plan. What is your horizon to maintain these things and bring them back to schedule and operational operability? If he had done that, you would have had a recovery of megawatts that were lost into the system. All he needed to do, they spent 11 billion on diesel. That 11 billion had just been prioritized towards fixing power plants. They needed between 15 and 20 billion right now, just to make sure that that 18,000 megawatts of lost capacity on breakdowns can be repaired and can be brought back into unit. If they had only just focused on that 11, it's almost 75% of the required budget to fix the power plant. They would have had a recovery right now.
Apologies for interjecting. I don't know if you listened to the interview with Kasatu Sizwe Pamla. He seems to think that the problems at Eskom are political, that you've got two ministers here. Even Gwedemantashe suggested such, that in this instance, perhaps it would be beneficial to have Eskom being part of one portfolio, not two ministers focused on certain aspects of this energy issue. What do you make of that?
I support that. Eskom should have already long been moved from public enterprise into the Department of Minerals and Energy. That should have been the priority focus. Unfortunately, there's been a mismatch because of the old regime. This was structured, by the way, at the time of President Zuma, when they moved all public enterprises, which is SOEs, into the DPE, the Department of Public Enterprise. And since then, they never returned that mandate back to where it's supposed to be. If it was under the Department of Minerals and Energy, and this fall guy should have been the Minister of Energy in respect to the failure to make sure that power plants operate. So in this case, yes, political interference, but in terms of fixing the engineering, the motors, the mechanics, the power plants, you don't really need ministers to be there. You don't even need to have them even closer. So whether they give you inputs or not, it is immaterial. The fundamentals are at the power stations. That is where the focus should have been. And unfortunately, Andre focused on all other things. Based on what? Running around the world, asking for money in order to introduce renewables, in order to introduce a smart grid into Eskom, and not focusing on the basics. Had he solved these basics, South Africans would have loved him. He would have been a darling today. There would be no load shedding. We would be praising him, and we would be encouraging him to even do a further investment in all other sectors, even if it is renewables and as well as moving into nuclear energy. But that has not happened.
Do you think at this point, if they are to identify a new CEO, it would be in the best interest of government to consult widely with a number of these experts, because you're Ted Blooms, yourselves. So do you think before they identify a candidate, they should consult as widely as possible?
Absolutely. We've been giving them free advice without even charging them for all these years. And we continue because we're doing it in the public interest. So as a result, we have said things that should have been done 5 years ago has not been implemented. But now that the problem is so exacerbated, our words are now sounding much more even important, that they should consult widely. They should consult civil society, experts, stakeholders. They should consult investors. They should consult people who have interest in Eskom. And on top of it, make sure that Parliament is involved in the process. And the board, I think, has taken a resolution right now when they accepted the resignation of Andre de Reuters that they are going to do a turnaround. My suspicion is he was already on a call to be fired, and he chose to actually jump the ship. That is my suspicion.
We'll never know. Thank you very much, though, Adil, for joining us this morning. That's energy expert Adil Nichabeleng.